Thank you very much, Nicole, for that very kind introduction. Thank you to, in his absence, I think, to Uncle Colin for the welcome to country. I also acknowledge the traditional lands that we live on, the lands of the Wurundjeri people, and I respect their spiritual relationship with country. I acknowledge my parliamentary colleagues, Luke and Lily. Had a bit of alliteration. I didn't even notice that. And to all those involved in Neighbourhood House Victoria, it's fantastic to be here with you. My father decided to migrate to Australia at the age of 75 to Melbourne, and then of course entered the lockdown. Along with my stepsisters and brothers, all who have young children. So every time I come to Melbourne, I say to you, thank you very much for what you did for the country. In listening to the health advice and doing the right thing, and I'm sure you're very glad to be out here at what is this the first in-person event? Did I hear you say that? First in-person networking event for the Neighbourhood Housing Centre since the start of the pandemic. So obviously this celebrates the Neighbourhood House Week last week, and an annual national celebration which recognises your exceptional contribution. I'm so glad that you have more houses than McDonald's. And I am even more glad that you foster a sense of community and shared purpose which improve community resilience, reduce inequality and work to create a fairer society. In 2019, Neighbourhood Houses Victoria celebrated its 40th anniversary. And today, as you've already heard, more than 400,000 people visit a neighbourhood or community house in Australia every week. As you know, 2020 presented unprecedented challenges to the more than 1,000 neighbourhood houses across Australia. In areas affected by the Black Summer bushfires, neighbourhood houses rallied to provide vital support from cooking meals and providing clothes to delivering mental health programs for bushfire victims. There was no I don't hold a hose, mate. And of course, sorry, that wasn't an speech. And of course, following that, we had the first global pandemic in more than 100 years, a challenge which would have been inconceivable previously. But once again, you stepped up to provide care and support for the communities that depend upon you. So I want to take this opportunity to recognise the contribution that was made in extraordinarily challenging circumstances last year. As I said, you in Victoria have been at the front of the line of the battle against COVID, experiencing more than 100 days of lockdown and isolation, and through that time, Neighbourhood Houses Victoria worked to provide a continued sense of community. Doing so in the middle of a global pandemic is an incredible achievement, and it is a testament to the determination of all of those who work in and support this sector. So I think the pandemic has been a reminder to all of us of what is important: our health, our family, our friends. For some, the distance from loved ones, and for others, lockdown has reinforced the importance of time with family and friends. It's reminded us of the importance of community, a community which has come together to support each other through these difficult times. But the pandemic has also demonstrated the importance of so much that we all fight for each and every day. Good, secure jobs, because those in insecure work we know have been the hardest hit economically, either losing hours or being ineligible for government support. A social safety net. Is that the one on the laptop? The phone?
I hope not.
Big fun. A social safety net. A reminder of why we have to ensure that Australians without work are supported decently. A robust public healthcare system, a properly resourced public service. You see, whilst the pandemic didn't create inequality, it exacerbated it everywhere. And so, as well as looking beyond the pandemic to our recovery, what I'd say to you is our challenge is not merely to come back, but to go back stronger. Go back stronger. And that's core to Labor's vision federally, and I know to the state level government's vision too. That's why we have committed to writing job security into the Fair Work Act, to properly define casual work, to providing 10 days paid domestic and family violence leave. It's why we've committed to ensuring older Australians have the care and support they deserve in the later years, and that those who support them are paid decent wages. It's why we're committed to doing all we can to provide the security of a roof over the head of more Australians. Because what we all strive for is an Australia where no one is left behind. And we're here today or online because we understand strong communities make that possible. That we don't leave people behind when our communities are stronger. Emerging as part of the 1970s women's movement, neighbourhood houses were conceived by a collective of trailblazing women in the Whitlam era Australia. They united with the determination to get away from the kitchen sink, that's actually a quote, and create opportunities for meaningful change in their communities. From helping migrant and refugee women advocate on issues affecting their communities and hosting employment skills workshops to addressing the issues of family and domestic violence, neighbourhood houses has continued to work to advance gender equality. And we have come a long way. Let's not forget that before the Sex Discrimination Act in 1984, it wasn't unlawful to discriminate on the basis of sex in employment, education, accommodation and provision of goods and services. Let's not forget a woman's credit rating and earnings capacity wasn't enough to get a loan from a bank, and that landlords refused to rent homes to single mums. Let's not forget women were sacked from their jobs because of their age, marital status or pregnancy. So we have come a long way. But there's still a fair bit of gender inequality in our world. We've slipped 26 places in the World Economic Forum's gender ranking since 2013. We're now in 50th places worldwide. It's the worst result ever. And of course, we've seen over the time the coalition has been government, the erosion of so much of which was built. Cuts to family benefits, cuts to childcare, schools and Medicare. Instead of moving to give women greater support in crisis, we've had a debate about whether women should rate their own superannuation to help them escape a violent relationship. And we've seen an unprecedented demand for domestic violence and housing support services throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. So across the country, it's unsurprising. Women are saying enough is enough. And I've described this as a searing national reckoning, a time of searing national reckoning, which has been spurred by alarming reports of sexual harassment and sexual assault in the federal parliament. That such acts could take place in a building where you're all represented is shocking to Australians. But I think the reason why so many women have responded so strongly, and men, but the reason women have responded so strongly is because it is an experience that so many of us understand. I've said previously, there's not a woman in this country who either hasn't survived an experience of sexual violence or hasn't had someone she cares about survive one. And that's why you saw tens of thousands of women march and rally across Australia, asserting a right to be safe. What they want is leaders who take responsibility, who act and provide leadership. One of the aspects of our budget reply, Anthony's budget reply last week, was a measure that didn't cost very much, but was important. It was saying that we would support the recommendation in the Respect at Work report, that to strengthen laws to make clear that employers must take steps to prevent sexual harassment at work. Because what that report showed us and our experience shows us is that existing laws aren't enough. Women who've gone before us did so much for the advancement of gender equality, and we have to keep carrying that mantle. Last year, after Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed, I gave a speech to the Senate and I said, we can't afford to look at the great achievements of human progress and be overwhelmed by their magnitude. We can't treat that progress as the work of only great figures in history, because we're not just their beneficiaries. We are the custodians of a constant project. We must, all of us, use what we know, where we are, to do what we can. And that's what you do. So thank you for doing what you can to nurture vibrant, inclusive, resilient communities for more than 40 years and enriching the lives of millions of Australians. And in closing, can I take this opportunity, because I am at another lunch after this, to wish all of the finalists of the Sector Awards all the very best and congratulate them on their incredible projects in the categories of community resilience, reducing inequalities, social enterprise, gender equity and climate action, all causes close to my heart and to yours. Thank you again for your great work.
Just wanted to thank her so much again for being here today and for those powerful words. For those of you who are on the front line in our neighbourhood house sector, you see the first-hand the experience of lots of our people who are left behind, lots of our women who are the victims of sexual assault, sexual violence, sexual harassment, gender-based violence, and you see it every day, and you work to overcome it, and I think it's incredibly important. But in my role as Anchor President, one of the things I'm really conscious of is that it's not enough to keep putting band-aids on, because often when putting band-aids on, we really need to bring about some structural change. And we need to make the world better, because that's why we do what we do. So just another couple of figures for Penny. There is a federal election coming up in the next sort of 12 months or so. And one of the, it's interesting, I think there's 38 marginal seats across Australia, so they're seats that require less than a 5% swing. And in running the numbers, it looks like we've got 177 houses across those marginal seats. So from my perspective, it's how do we rally those voices? How do we rally the people on the ground to bring about the sort of change that we want, a more equal society where our women aren't subject to violence and that people aren't left behind. So maybe that's a conversation we can continue to keep having. Just before Penny goes, Angela, did you want to, so I'm going to introduce my president of Neighbourhood House Victoria, Angela Stockdale.